Everybody's talking about bonus skill damage because of the new commander, Trajan, but that got me thinking, just how good is bonus skill damage anyways? Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisco Gaming, a sponsored content creator for Rise of Kingdoms, and today we are going to compare bonus skill damage to attack to see which stats are actually better, which items and accessories are actually better, and these results probably will surprise you. If you like Rise of Kingdoms guides that help you get value and smash your enemies, then hey, consider smashing that subscribe button for daily Rise of Kingdoms videos. All of this buzz about Trajan, which I know, I've been talking about him a lot too, got me thinking, is there a way I can prove exactly how good this bonus skill damage is? So I went and I did a test. And in this video, we'll have some timestamps in the description so you can jump to whatever portion you want. In the beginning of the test, we're going to explain our test method using Edward of Woodstock of all commanders. In the next portion, we're going to show you the reports. And in the final portion, we'll talk about our conclusions. Is bonus skill damage actually good? How does it stack up compared to attack? And more. In fact, we'll even debunk some beliefs about accessories that you will be surprised which ones perform better. So let's start with our methodology for the test that we ran today. In fact, we ran this test live on stream while we were watching the Mars rover land. It was pretty freaking cool. I'll have a card up in the top if you want to see this all unfold in real time. So you know that this isn't made up. It's something we did live on stream. So Edward of Woodstock, we ran this test. We used 100,000 cavalry. So he's not getting a lot of the benefits he would get for all the archer units. We removed the randomness that would come from a lot of his talents. He does already have a little bit of bonus skill damage here, but that's not going to really skew the test overly much. So that was the methodology for the commander doing the attacking. We would use Edward of Woodstock, and in 3 different tests, we would have 3 different conditions met. In the first test, we would have nothing special done to Edward of Woodstock at all. It was the control. In the second test, we would have plus 10% skill damage. We accomplished that by using 2 things. First of all, we used the Pendant of Eternal Night, and we used a 5% city skin, the Saint's Halo, which I'm actually using right now. So I know that's not 30%, but it's pretty easy to get 10% of skill damage, and on top of that, it's also really easy to then take those things off and to gain 10% of archer stats. And in this case, because we were using cavalry, we actually had to go and get 10% of cavalry stats. So we had a 5% attack skin, and we had an item that gave me the 5% of stats I needed. Weirdly enough, it was this item right over here. 5% cav attack there, 5% from the skin, and we're off to the races. So if you had to guess before we even run this test, what's going to be better? Bonus skill damage or bonus to attack? Many people don't know that attack percentage does several things for you. It boosts your normal attacks, it boosts your counterattacks, and it boosts your skill damage. It's actually kind of a big deal. Attack is a very strong stat, and the more skill damage you do, well, the better that stat becomes. Now, using those 3 configurations that we just talked about, we ran them against a level 22 barb. All of this was on territory every single time we did it. We battled a 22 barb. We would go until the first activation of the active skill of Edward of Woodstock. We would record the damage and we would compare. So in this test, we battled that level 22 barb 3 times. I have favorited those reports. In the first report, we did nothing to our Edward of Woodstock. It was base. We took off our city skin. And the battle log reveals to us that we were doing about 1,990 normal and counterattack damage. Of note here, it took the barbarian 2 turns to figure out we were attacking it and turn around and attack back, which is kind of unusual. The active skill did a healthy 13,081 damage. And yes, I'll put all this in a table to make it easy to understand. There were no boosts here to skill damage. You'll see there's no boost to skill damage in the temporary buffs, and the boost to skill damage that he'll have over here are from his talents. That is 11%. 8% come from the archer tree, 3% from the skill tree. Now, we went in and we added the 10% skill damage. Weirdly enough, the Pendant of Eternal Night shows up over here for whatever reason, giving us 5% extra skill damage. And when we make our way to the troop buffs, we'll see that now we are up to 16% skill damage boost over here. The grand total of 10% skill damage boost is achieved. When we look in the battle log, the normal and counterattack damage is just about the same at 1,986 compared to the 1,990. However, the skill damage obviously went up a meaningful amount. We went from that 13,081 skill damage to 13,871 skill damage. That's a solid 790 boost to the skill damage that we dealt. We'll make all of this on a chart so it's easy to see and compare in just a moment. The next thing I want to show you is the final piece of the puzzle. That is when we take off the skill damage gear and we add in troop attack. So you can see here our cav attack is 114. In the previous report, our cav attack was 104. So we did gain that flat 10% boost. And when we go look in the report, we can see that the normal and counterattack damage is boosted a very meaningful amount here. We're up to 2,092, up from the 1,990 in the base that we did in our first test. This is a big deal. Attack boost does amazing stuff for your normal and counterattack damage. But of course, there is more. When we look at the active skill was boosted an extremely meaningful amount, a shockingly similar amount to when we had 10% skill damage. That is 13,685 damage total, or 604 lift from the baseline. So if we now take all of this, put it onto a chart, onto the screen, the thing that you'll find quite revealing is that bonus to attack is extremely good. Honestly, if we compare Trajan's buff to Joan of Arc's buff, and this is kind of a big deal, Joan of Arc's buff is probably just better. Not only does it last for 4 seconds, which is a big deal, it also is giving you 50 more rage. Hard to believe, but it is true that still Joan of Arc is looking like a really amazing commander to bring onto the battlefield. Now, with that said, the rest of Trajan's kit is obviously much stronger than the rest of Joan's kit, although we gotta give a head nod to that Saint bonus. Ooh, 25% normal attack. That is all white damage, the damage you deal out and the damage you deal when you're being attacked. It's really quite exceptional. Given that attack boosted our skill damage a very meaningful amount, it boosted our white damage, that is our sort of basic attack and counterattack, the damage we deal to the target we are targeting, and the damage we deal back to all targets that are hitting us, by the way. The attack boost scales up with the number of people hitting you. Granted, you're going to get wrecked, but even commanders like Richard I, who's sort of a punching bag, benefits from having a lot of attack because you'll deal a lot of counterattack damage back out. But with all that said, what does this mean for bonus skill damage? This means that bonus skill damage is probably not as good as you thought it was. In fact, 1% of bonus skill damage might be roughly as good as 1% of attack is worth to you. So the question then becomes, where could we break bonus skill damage? And there is an answer. Because you see, for a commander like Edward of Woodstock, bonus skill damage is actually really bad. He fires his active skills very infrequently. And although it is a high amount of active skill damage, it's not an insane amount of active skill damage. So the commanders that really benefit a huge amount from bonus skill damage are commanders that do area of effect damage. A commander like Esong benefits a lot from bonus skill damage because he's doing 1,700 damage factor to potentially 5 targets. So bonus skill damage will be best for marches that are a combination, for instance, of Esong with Nebuchadnezzar. You've now got a boatload of skill damage being done from Esong's active skill, and Nebuchadnezzar not only is going to hit 5 targets, which is really quite good. If you were rallying with him, there is bonus direct damage factor as well that will benefit from the bonus to skill damage. So having more skill damage is one way that bonus skill damage could be much, much better than attack. The other way that you can make bonus skill damage much, much better than raw attack is to be firing off your active skills more frequently, right? So one piece of the equation is hit more targets. The other piece of the equation is have skill damage be a higher percentage of the total damage you deal out. So to give some examples of where that would be the case, you could have a commander, for instance, like Cyrus the Great, who not only will happily take all that rage gen that you're getting from other commanders doing buffs like Joan of Arc and William and Trajan, he also was giving himself ridiculous amounts of rage as well. He'll give himself 150 extra rage. Plus, you could go into the talents and you could go in the skill tree and get even more rage gen. Plus, you could put a Horn of Fury on this dude. And now, honestly, like, I don't know how fast you could be firing off these skills, but it feels pretty freaking insane to me. So I mention that because the area where bonus skill damage will perform best is in situations where you have very high rage gen and you are hitting multiple targets. And you have multiple forms, by the way, of skill damage on that commander and that commander pairing that will benefit a lot. If you don't have those conditions, then they're not all that exciting. So when we look at a commander like Trajan, the thing that will make him stronger and will make this buff better than a Joan of Arc buff is if every march that you're buffing is in fact very high skill damage, area of effect damage focused. But when this buff lands on a commander like Richard Charles as a combination, not that I think that's a combination you should be using. In fact, I wouldn't say it is. But if it lands on a combination like that, it's completely wasted. I mean, sure, the rage gen is good. The rage gen is still good, but the rest of it, wasted. Now, there is more that I want to talk about here because practically speaking, it's not just Trajan that buffs skill damage. A lot of people look at this Pendant of Eternal Night, and I've talked about this in the past in a very detailed equipment video. I'll have a card up in the top, but I did manage to find my test results when we were preparing for KVK Season 5. I was not sure if Pendant of Eternal Night was actually going to perform better than a silent trial. So in Kingdom 75, yeah, we ran that test. And the way that we ran that test is as follows, and of course I'm pulling up the results now. We battled with Chandragupta Khan, and the only piece of equipment we put on Chandragupta and Khan was the Pendant of Eternal Night in one set of tests, and in the other set of tests, it was the silent trial. Now, we did this in Ark of Osiris testing. This was a long time ago. Okay, it was Ark of Osiris practice matches, but we did run multiple rallies to try to weed out some amount of variation and randomness. And although this test isn't perfect, I think it will still be helpful. What we were rallying into, by the way, was YSS paired with Wu Zetian. So we had Chandragupta Khan, very high skill damage, right? You would have thought that Chandragupta and Khan would do a ton of skill damage, in part because Khan can have his skill fire again, right? I mean, geez, if you have your active skill fire a second time due to this right over here, and you're generating lots of rage, that seems really good. Now, these are rallies that we let run into the ground. So we just let the rally run until it was fully defeated. We isolated for all the other things like city skin and so on, so that it was a perfectly fair test. And what did we find is that the Pendant of Eternal Night actually performed worse than the silent trial. And I couldn't believe it. Now, the numbers that you're looking at on screen, the higher the number is, the more severe wounds we won by when compared to the garrison. In other words, that number represents the number of severe wounds that we inflicted on the garrison minus the number of severe wounds that were inflicted back on us. So the higher that number is, the better that that item performed. And on average, the silent trial slightly outperformed the Pendant of Eternal Night. And it's not by much, but also when you just look at the number of materials it takes to make the Pendant of Eternal Night, that is a big deal. Not only did the Pendant of Eternal Night not work as well as the silent trial, it costs like 3 or 4 times as much to make. So bonus skill damage really does require extensive amounts of skill damage fired off very, very frequently to outweigh the other options that are available to you, whether it is an accessory like the silent trial, or if we're even just looking at things that add bonus to attack. I mean, it It feels pretty exciting when you go in and you work on a legendary set, and this set bonus gives you 3% bonus skill damage, and I get that archers do a lot of skill damage and you can get a lot of value out of that, but for bonus skill damage to perform extremely well, above and beyond what your other options will be, you have to be doing that area of effect damage and firing off those skills very frequently. Now, look, I'm very open to alternate perspectives on the information that we found here or alternate ways of testing. If you've got a proposed alternate approach for how we go about finding out whether or not the bonus skill damage is really particularly good or how it compares, then let me know down below in the comments, and we're happy to potentially go and give that a run and see what works better. I personally am still very interested in Trajan as a commander. I am very interested in investing in commanders that are very high skill damage, and also a lot of commanders that do a lot of buffs. This is one of many reasons why I've been saying many times now that although Attila Takeda is so amazing for 1v1 situations, I want to be moving away from commanders like Attila Takeda that are not doing area of effect damage in a big brawl, but are taking lots of area of effect damage in a big brawl. But that's topic for a separate video. Attila Takeda is still good. I'm just trying to go Super Saiyan over here, all right? If you're looking for more information about equipment, then be sure to check out that card I shared earlier. Tap that info button up top. You can check out my guide for accessories. It is very detailed and has a bunch of math in there. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.